kind of China you arrived in 1993? And I'm saying this because that was the time when you came back to China, when Uli Sigg had finished his work with Schindler and was actually about to become the ambassador. You as a Chinese person with a foreigner's view or eye looking at China of the year 1993.
93, after 12 years, I stayed in the United States. I decided to go back to China. First, I have nothing to do in the United States. It has been proved. I've been hanging around here for 12 years. There's nobody need me since I don't have good. I never integrated with that society, except I love art and I go to all the art shows, openings, or culture-related activities, poetry readings. But I kind of feel very bored and tired because there's no need for me to be there, and I start to repeat my day after day, just no purpose, nowhere to go, or there's no any kind of establishment there. So I decided to go back to see my father because he's ill and he's in hospital. Of course, once I arrived, my brother, he knows I would have nothing to do. He's so worried. So he already started to go to antique market because I think that's the only thing I can really focus on or be interested in, because we never really had a Chinese culture study. And the second day I arrived, we went to antique market. The market in China is really booming. You can find anything from anything human ever made in that piece of land from thousands years ago, and everything just there on the table. And many of the shop owners doesn't even know what they get, So it's quite innocent time. You can spend a few dollars to buy a museum piece. So that really attracted me a lot. So I did about 6 years, just every day go to the antique market. There's nothing else I feel I can really do. That time there's no gallery, no museum, no any art newspaper or even article talk about art.
In general, when I'm going back to China today, I see that most people of your generation, the youngers, have, on the one hand, a kind of exposure internationally. So they go, they know a lot about the rest of the world, they are connected to the world, but at the same time, they feel deeply rooted in the country. So there is obviously a kind of Chinese mentality of being among themselves also. There are, of course, a few others, like, for example, your fellows from the Star Group, who never came back. And that's why, in the collection itself, Uli's collection, he always focused on the Chinese art being mostly based, as you know. He never collected the diaspora Chinese world. However, I would like to know from you, what do you think about the diaspora, as a diaspora, the Chinese diaspora? What do you think about them?
Uli is early involved with Chinese phenomenon. What attracted him is about what happened in China. I think he was quite a young man, and whatever in China would be completely different from Switzerland. So I can understand that he's not interested in anything which not happening in that land. And at a very early stage of his collection, and he explained to me his strategy or why he started to collect. And I think he, from the very beginning, has very clear idea. He put it very simple. He said years later, China would realize the best of the works of that period of time or of those artists are gone. It's not going to be there. Now this is a very simple idea, but he also come to a very disciplined behaving just to collect the works which are made in China. And in most time he followed that discipline. And also I think collecting for him is not behaving just get the works. I think it's which is very different from most collectors to use money exchange for item. But for him it's a step to have set up some kind of communication between him and the so-called Chinese contemporary culture. So he would really get to know those artists, to went their studios, talk to them personally, and following their strange ideas, their character, this unbelievable personalities, and those things fascinate him and gave him a reason to collect. There's not much pure aesthetic judgment, because that judgment would come from nowhere. He would not use the Western standard or Western aesthetic to test the Chinese what happened in Chinese art world, but rather to use a very personal judgment. Of course, he's quite knowledgeable in Western art. He already started collecting some Western works, and he's very well informed. He had this kind of lifestyle. Every day he would read all those newspapers in the morning. So once I made a work called a newspaper reader, because I found out in his home there was no bookshelf at that time. Now he pretended he has some bookshelves, but in the bookshelf is only art catalogs, which you wouldn't call it books. It's really wasting paper to print those catalogs. It looks pretty, but it doesn't offer you intellectual ideas. So he's still a person. All the ideas come from reading important newspapers. All the newspapers in German language mostly are quite intellect. A lot of argument and a lot of ideas, exchange of ideas, and he used his experience to set up a new type of collection, which is basically from ground zero, and gradually he built up his own empire, thousands works, because there's no single collector like him. If you talk about collecting Chinese art in the world, till today maybe less than 10 real collectors, but out of the 10, 9 of them are collected the way which you cannot really figure out why and how. But except this guy, he has very clear idea, vision, and always followed that discipline.
How did you actually meet? Do you remember the first time you met him?
First time I met him in my mom's courtyard. That time I'm not an artist, I'm a collector. But somebody lead him to see me because he in his name list, I'm the earliest artist. By that time I didn't do art, I was doing collecting. So he looked at some of my early works, a few in my room, really decorative reason, because I try to remind myself I did art before, because nobody else cared. And my artworks, when it's hanging there, nobody even understands that's artwork. So that makes me happy about it. Today I don't hang in any artworks because people immediately know that's artwork. So there's no reason to hang in works like that. I only hang in the museum walls. I will not pollute my personal surrounding. And so Uli saw this vase I did purely for joke, a hand-done vase, painted a Coca-Cola drawing on it. So he said, "What is it?" It's in a corner, it's just a kind of space nobody know what to do. So he put a vase there with a sign, which is ridiculous, I did it for no reason, and but I said, "Oh, that's just an old piece of antique. I think something's missing on it. It must be painted before, but all the colors went off during 2000 years, so I repainted." So he said he liked it. I said, "Then it could be yours." He said, "Really?" So he picked up, and I remember he gave me maybe, I don't even remember he gives me money or not, but I'm very happy somebody as a Swiss ambassador would have that. So my apartment's very small, so at least I can have more space there. So yeah, that was the first work I collect.
You were speaking about the researcher, the strategy of Uli, and it would be nice to talk quickly about the award he has announced in the late 90s as a tool of getting to know people and making connections, etc. Because you were also involved in this, and that's why it would be nice to have your story about this.
At the moment, late 90s, the moment he's going to be off duty from his diplomat post, and he told me the idea maybe he should have this art award or some kind of activity which can help him still get to be informed with Chinese art world, because by then he's already did a lot of collecting and also deeply involved. So you need a form to review annually about what's going on in China among the whole art world and the new works or younger artists. Also, we talked about in China there's no public platform for any kind of communication. Artists work as unconnected because there's no base, no platform, no foundation, no museums. So it's really needed to have this. Then he asked me if I want to be part of it as a jury. Of course, I said yes. That time I was still working I did 3 books already. I was working in China Art Archives and Warehouse. So we're probably one of the few contemporary art space to showing the works or the activities of the artist in a very, standard space. So I do have some knowledge of what's going on. So I remember I worked with him annually. We would have, collect all those artworks, thousands of them, from thousands artists, and which includes all different category, painting and sculpturing or videos or all kind of works. And we would review it and select it. Then he invited international juries. Those juries he invited become a very important factor in Chinese contemporary art development.
What do you think about the idea of, because it had of course also an effect on his own collection, and what do you think about this relationship between having an award and getting to know about artists and then collecting them also?
I think this serves many purposes. First, it really gave China a solid platform for annually to examine the works for him, also for the public to know there's a possibility to gather and work together to be selected by a committee. The committee has very high international standard. And the second, it introduced Chinese work to an international platform. As a result, many works has been exposed to the West. I'm one of a beneficiary of this activity. He introduced me first to Harold Zeman on 98. So I was being selected 99 as the Venice Biennial, which I wasn't even prepared, because at that time I don't have work. I just started making my furniture series, but it's just a few pieces, never really, I never even had a gallery show before I become a Venice artist, which has really surprised me. And of course, that's really Harold Zeman's vision and his generosity, I guess, And Uli would never push anybody or anything, but he just simply introduced him to me. And one day, and before Harold leave, he said, "I'd like to see your studio." I do have a studio, but there's not much activity. I have a few tables, strange works. And so I showed him. He said, "Yes, you're in." So I was very surprised. Venice Biennial is such a, big thing for artists. My late luck, like Chris Durkin and other shows, I had a show in Munich, and somehow, and also another show. First, my show is in Bern, Kunstbern, which is a director, Fibiher, Bernard Fibiher. It's very young curator, and also through Uli's introduction. But I'm sure Uli just politely said there's artist who's desperately or something. I don't know, and ever know how he would introduce me to those people. But as a result, I got into those shows, and the result was pretty good. So I always tell him, doesn't matter how famous I become, he is the maker. He's the one really, made things impossible. Otherwise, I would never think I would be a, artist or to be noticed. I will be still doing architecture or collecting artworks, mostly antiquities, or just playing poker somewhere on some table. So, that's our relation. But I never asked him to do me a favor, not in my life. But he did it voluntarily as a friend, and he never really take for credit. We always joke about it.
So when when we met last time in spring, you were about to having shows in Beijing for the first time. So in the meantime it happened. So you're actually, do you think that you have been rehabilitated, or what was your impression with the shows and afterwards?
Since I never been clearly told I cannot have a show in China, so I said, why don't I just have our show? And once I decided that, several friends, they have galleries, they all said, oh, we like you to have a show in our place, and they are quite, I think they're quite brave. Of course, the authorities are very aware of that, and they are always nervous, but they also wanted to see what will happen. They also have this very cautious mood and learning from it. I'm sure they're learning from it, and so I think to act in this kind of society, I always believe an activist or artist as somebody practitioner, at the same time as educator, because only through doing that you can let your obsession and your people around you to understand you. Otherwise, how it's just pure argument. So I did that, which was very successful. The opening day was over 4,000 or 5,000 people come. They never had a show like that, and the article we put on internet has been reposted 20,000 times. Suddenly my name is everywhere. Internet doesn't even delete it. It seems, they have some kind of policy from the state to try or to not to interfere that much, otherwise it will be deleted immediately. So 1 month later, I get my passport. So I still think that's a friendly gesture.
While you were in this very difficult situation, other people became rich at the same time, artists. And it's not about now complaining about this, it's rather interesting to see from your perspective the boom of contemporary Chinese art as a kind of global phenomenon.
I always heard the boom of contemporary Chinese artists. Also, I heard some kind of China has become like a second largest some kind of auction market or something. I always thought about those numbers. I have a really strong difficulty to understand this phenomenon about so-called Chinese art. And for me, contemporary art is a part of contemporary philosophy and understanding of life. It's not a form or color or style. So when a society has such strong censorship and limit a very basic discussions or argument of very fundamental values, very fundamental judgment. And so I would say the art and the literature in that society, if it's not in questioning that authority, it's a fake. It's not worth to be mentioned. But of course, my critical view doesn't suit anybody else. Only it's really from my heart.
There is another notion I more recently observed in China, and this is that people speak again more about tradition, including artists who suddenly, after maybe sometimes even 20 years of doing artwork, which is very readable to Western people because it's not so different from what you would find it in the Western Hemisphere, but suddenly they start also doing calligraphy, landscaping, blah blah blah. And seriously, you feel, of course, in the whole society, I mean, I at least sense that there's a negotiation going on about Chineseness, national identity, reconnecting to the past history. Can you elaborate on this a bit?
I think the whole argument or phenomenon about returning back to history, which is also a false argument, and tradition is like a well of water. If it tastes good, people always go back to drink it. But only when China, like all the water being polluted, so they have to find some other sources. Since tradition is a safe ground for them to go back, but after decades of destroying the tradition and no real discussion about what tradition is, China doesn't have a platform in identify or to redefine what Chinese tradition is. So that is completely ridiculous when they talk about tradition, because they don't know what they're talking about. China have a long history, and half of the Chinese history was occupied or influenced by the Western, or not Western, but foreign influence. Could be from Persian, from Buddhist, from invaders from Mongolia or Manchu, and it's never a clear thing as a tradition, or not a tradition. Could be very mixed period of different type of sense, very different kind of thinking. So today, when they talk about tradition, they only get some very shallow images, such as brush or ink and paper. I'm sure that time they don't have that many colors. They never see industrial made color. They just get some colors from stone or rock, and they don't have many colorful rocks, I guess. So it's very limited.
And do you think, because from a Western perspective, China is still on the rise regardless of what's happening economically currently, so people would say that the Chinese now become the global power of the 21st century, and part of this process is regaining also a national identity. Do you think this could happen? Because some of your colleagues, artists I was talking to, would even say in the next generation China will be again in the position it was 200 years before.
I think that this kind of assumption to say China is going to be a big power or going to be even matters or influential that much in the world politics, I think it's really an illusion or fabricated false accusation, because this is not possible. If you see a nation which not admitting the truth, not honest about its own past, then it would not see any rational analyzing about their own future, which is not only a nation, an individual, or any group. So China today doesn't show any sign of progressive meaning. It doesn't contribute to world civilization as meaningful ideas or points, except offering cheap labors or a big market for consuming. And besides these two, there's nothing which is valuable. And I think that is it's just a pure illusion.
Very sad to hear.
Well, we don't have to divide us as Chinese, the world will become very different later. I think, if you see the young people who travel to the world, they don't have to say they're Chinese, and so I think world is changed, and many concepts today we are using also will change. So when the concept changes, some problems will disappear by itself.
The last question is related to Hong Kong, the donation. Maybe you can speak a bit about what you think about Uli's decision. I suppose that he has contacted you also before and you gave some advice, etc.
Uli is a person who, because he's a very good businessman and a very, very skillful diplomat, and he loved his art and he cared about where those art should be. And I admire his idea about his art should be a public property, and even it comes from one person, but it really belongs to a culture, which means a public property. So he for quite a long time we discussed where those works should go. Of course, I'm the person who totally against to give any of the collections to China, even it comes from China, because I understand that this authority doesn't care. If you give to them, you better just throw at the bottom of the Suez lake. It's better even. Of course, that will be environmental disaster, but still, it will create some voice. But to give it to China means it just disappear in some warehouse or nobody care about it. And because they have seen too many valuable works has been destroyed by that political situation, and that makes them has no really passion on any kind of art in relating to our aesthetics. So the next choice is somewhere close to China, which is Hong Kong, and I think that's interesting what they did to make this as a first body of work for M Plus Museum, because if you think about a huge museum without a foundation stone, could be very problematic. Now they have this body of work, which have a clear identity with the time, place, and with the collector. I think it's such a treasure for any museum. So he made a very good decision, but that decision doesn't really clearly works with a foundation or with an institution which is not very clear. Hong Kong's future is not very clear, and the way they understand art, I think, is very limited, and it's very bureaucratic. So, still, this is a question.